Welcome in, Oklahoma Sooners fans and college football fans, to another edition of Oklahoma Sooners Live here at Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football. I'm your host, Josh Mahler. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Real Josh Mahler. And then, of course, follow the show, follow the network over on social media. All those links are down in the description below. We are live, so make sure to jump in that live chat, drop your questions, concerns. We've got some big news that just dropped yesterday about the athletic director, Joe Castiglione, retiring, or at least announcing his retirement, not really retiring yet. And I've got a very special guest with me here to discuss it, because I feel like, big news like this just isn't fun to discuss by yourself. So I had to bring Travis Davidson on with me. Travis, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm good. Still kind of, I don't know, digesting the news that dropped yesterday morning. It was funny because, I was on my way to the office, and, I'm tuned into KREF, Dari Noka, started a show there with us. So he's chatting. And I thought to myself, because I'm the vice president of the OU Club of Tulsa, and we're making business cards for the officers to hand out, recruiting, grow the club, things like that. Well, I thought to myself, I said, I kind of want it to look like an official OU business card. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to look like, the real deal. So I was like, when I get to the office, I'm going to text Joe Castiglione and have him send me a picture of his business card, just to find a model to shape it after. And then before I could even get to the office, the news dropped. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to text him right now asking him for a picture of his business card.
He's going to be completely overwhelmed at that point.
Exactly. I'm like, this guy's phone's going to be a wreck. I shot him a congratulatory text and things like that, obviously. And then I texted Zach Selman and said, I hope you didn't have plans today, because your phone's about to be worthless. So I was like, you're going to about to answer a lot of questions. So no, it's been good. It's been fun today was fun.
Yeah.
The press conference. Very rarely do you get an opportunity for somebody to come in and say, hey, I'm going to retire 3 years from now. So here's the announcement. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird.
And yeah, it's odd, and it just goes to show, and we'll get into this too. But it just goes to show, man, how selfless he is and how loyal he is. I think that him announcing it this way, fans should really appreciate that, because he could totally just drop a Lincoln Riley on you and, man, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm out in the midnight hour. I'm just gone. And instead, he decided, no, I want to stick around and help transition this in. And he's already been such a big part in transitioning in so many different ways, transitioning into the SEC, and then now this. I think this is really big for Oklahoma, and hopefully fans recognize that and appreciate that.
Yeah, you think about it. ADs don't often just retire. Like they often, much like big time coaches, right? Like you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. A lot of people, and I know some Twitter trolls were having their way with it, but the hashtag fire Joe C stuff. But Joe C, he could have been athletic director here until he was 90 if he wanted. He widely nationally respected, 117 conference titles, 26 national titles. It's funny. I brought up Zach Selman earlier. Do you know how many national titles Mississippi State has in team sports in the entire history of their athletic department?
No, I don't.
One.
Really?
One national title. It was 2021 baseball.
In the entire school.
Yep. In team sports. So it's funny, because there are some people that are like, man, I really don't want to hire Zach Selman. What has he been able to do at Mississippi State? I was like, what has anybody been able to do at Mississippi State? You know what I mean? Like, but it's crazy to me that Joe C, I need to do the math sometime, do a little research. I know that he's got more national titles to his name than Mississippi State and Ole Miss combined, because Ole Miss only has like 2. When you start adding up, like, how many does Vanderbilt have? Like, does Joe Castiglione have more national titles to himself than 3 or 4 SEC schools combined? I think it's certainly possible. So it's just interesting when you look at that type of sustained success, multiple dynasties under him, whether you look at women's gymnastics, softball, the run that Bob was able to go on, just wild success. Final four, I think 5 Final Fours between men's and women's basketball, big time stuff. So, yeah, I mean, his legacy, I just want to know what his statue is going to look like. I imagine it has a fedora. I imagine it's in a suit. When he came to speak to the OU Club of Tulsa, we try and do like a little casual fireside chat, Q&A. And I was talking to his assistant, and I was like, hey, he can just wear a polo if he wants. Like, it's a casual, like, we're trying to make it a real casual, like, comfortable, setting. And she was like, and part of it was because I was interviewing him up on the podium. And she was like, well, Joe's most comfortable in a suit, so he'll be in a suit and tie. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'm wearing a suit and tie then. So, but that's just how he was, man. And what was so cool is anytime you're around Norman, you could be at a random, women's tennis match and you'd see Joe C hanging out in the corner, right? He was so happy for all the athletes. He continues to be happy for all the athletes. I don't want to speak as if he's gone, but he's definitely a titan in the game, and he's got a special tree now throughout the ACC, SEC, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm listening to you, and I'm also clicking around trying to figure out. I know I've got internet issues, and I don't know why. It just seems like it's going through the program, but I can hear you fine. I'm just recognizing that mine's really laggy. So hopefully that's going through okay.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
You look a little blurry.
And I don't know what that is. And I can see that like my connection here on the streaming platform is not cooperating with how fast my computer is feeling. So hopefully
it's all good.
Hopefully that goes through. But anyways, I mean, for those who haven't heard, Joe Castiglione, after 27 seasons, is that right? This would be going into his 28th.
Because he'll retire on his 30th.
Yeah. So I mean, just he finally announces that he's retiring. He's retiring from Oklahoma, and it's crazy too to see the response. And this is something I'll talk about later too. It's just how Oklahoma fans react and push the blame game so often, especially on social media. And you got to feel for guys that are in that spotlight, like Joe Castiglione, that as much heat as he's been on, just because the team isn't winning as much as fans want them to, I think that shadows all of the great success that he's had and how long he's been around and what he's brought Oklahoma from. For those who can remember the 90s, I'm young enough where I don't really remember the 90s. I was born in the 90s, so but going forward, I know what he brought him out of. I saw the product after that, and so you have to appreciate what Joe C did for this program, and not just football too. I think a lot of people push the football program on him only, but the entire athletics department goes under Joe Castiglione. Think of what softball has done. Think of how good the baseball program has come under Skip Johnson and what they've done there. And the basketball programs, both the gymnastics, all of that falls under the athletic director and what Joe Castiglione's done. So just an incredible accomplishment for him over this long tenure that he's had at Oklahoma.
Yeah, for sure. And what's most impressive, really, and President Joe Harris mentioned this today at the press conference, was the original budget whenever Joe Castiglione showed up. I think the athletics department's budget was like $25 million annually, and they were $18 million in debt as an athletic department. Well, now it's a $235 million annual budget in the athletic department. And the university, they're very proud of this. Anytime you get Harris in front of a microphone, he talks about this. Oklahoma is one of a handful of schools that the athletic department actually gives money to the school. The average everyday student is not subsidizing the athletic department. So that they're very proud of that. And that is through smart strategy, smart spending, not paying massive buyouts, it's not a lot of turnover at the administrative level when you're looking at guys like Larry Nafee or Greg Tipton and things like that, like guys that have been there a long time and have been able to steady the ship, no massive regime changes. So, yeah, I mean, the financial aspect of it has been nothing short of miraculous. And that's what's so funny when people talk about Oklahoma nationally. It's like, well, I mean, you look at the schools that need their fan base or their student base or the state to subsidize their athletic department. Like Oklahoma's not doing that. So they must be doing something right from a financial perspective. I wore my unapologetic shirt today because Joe brought it up today in his press conference. He said they're very unapologetic about bringing their families into it, bringing coaches' families into it. They are a family first, integrity first, do it the right way first type of program. That's always been like that. Now there are many college football fans, many Sooner fans, Josh, that'll say, come on, I want you to get in the mud. I want you to get a little dirty. Get rid of compliance. Get rid of doing it the right way. We want to win. Yeah, I mean, I get that perspective. I absolutely do. Yeah. But, man, I've talked to coaches that have coached here that no longer coach here and talked about how they wanted to win it more at Oklahoma because of the way that the programs conducted themselves. So, and that's a direct reflection of Joe Castiglione. So, when you look at, again, the financial turnaround, the championships, the hiring, he didn't hire Patty, but got her 2 new stadiums, right? They were at Reeves Park whenever he showed up, moved them onto campus, Marita Hines, and then now Love's. They've got new facilities with gymnastics and tennis. They're working on new facilities for baseball and basketball. They've upgraded the football offices and stadium facilities over and over and over under his tenure. And, he was still so sought after, he had to turn down a job 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's SMU had interest in him. Maryland had interest in him. And now he's like hanging it up.
Yeah, and a lot of Oklahoma fans, I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't understand the Joe C. hate just because all the stuff that you're bringing up. It's valid reasons for him. He's had 26 total national championships under his name. He's had 117 conference championships under his name. He was the one that hired Bob Stoops. He's also the one that pushed for Brent Venables. We'll see how that one plays out. That one's still a work in progress currently, but still, I think you've seen the moves that he's made throughout his career, transitioning Oklahoma to the SEC and really getting that there. And then, like you said too, just all the renovations, with Love's Field being probably the biggest one that people, really all the softball facilities being one of the biggest ones that he's done because of how huge that is for that sport. And what that team specifically has been for that sport. And then the $160 million renovation that he did to the football stadium. If you think, it wasn't that long ago that Oklahoma, the stadium, it was older. There wasn't as many kind of newer renovations in it. And then you also didn't have the end zone. I'm trying to think of which side that is. That was opened up and now it's closed off. South side. Okay, that's what I thought it was. And then you've got I believe the East Side Suites that he put together, and just so many things that he's done. And I think it was 2017. I think it might have been done in 2019, something like that. But on the football stadium. But just all of the success that he has brought to Norman, and you can say, yeah, what is all that doing for the football team? But that's packing in how many more fans into that stadium, and especially with the transition over to the SEC. Could you imagine if if Oklahoma was only seating 70,000 and now on the bottom of the SEC in terms of attendance and how many people they're able to hold, the capacity of their stadium? There's a lot that goes into that, and I think that's stuff that's overlooked many times.
Well, and I brought this up whenever I was talking about candidates, but Mike Alford at Florida State, right? Zach Selman at Mississippi State, Kirby Hocutt at Texas Tech, Ren Baker at West Virginia. They don't coach the football teams there. Joe Castiglione does not coach the football team at Oklahoma. They don't call the plays.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit frustrating at times already, the discourse, because there are some that are like, oh, I don't want Zach Selman. Look how bad Mississippi State was at football last year. Which Mississippi State has had two 10-win programs two 10-win teams since World War II. Like,
Yeah.
if you're just looking at football, right? Oh, and I mean, Florida State, they were terrible last year. They went undefeated the year before. So like the idea that like it's tough because the average fan doesn't know what a coach really does, right? Like, so when there's a coaching hire, people are like, oh well, this guy's won. Okay, why do you want him? Do you like, what scheme does he run? Does it fit our measurement? Well, I don't know. Well, does it fit our personnel? Well, I don't know. What this, that, and the other. Like, what was their they'll look at like a Wes Godwin being added to the linebacker room, and they're like, we looked at Clemson's defense last year, and he was a bad DC. Well, he'd probably be a good linebacker coach because that's what he was under Venables when Venables was the DC out there. Like, but that you lack a little bit of nuance. Well, that gets ratcheted up 100-fold when you're talking about athletic directors, because everybody seems to think it's, oh well, they're the ones that put the football team out there. I mean, yeah, but no. Like, they hire the people. That's a whole nother monster. But he went and hired Jim Nagy. He brought in Randall Stevenson. They brought in Taylor Redd and Jake Rosenberg and Kale and Lake and Stacy and all these people. Like, they've been forward thinking on it. Like, they've been trying to be ahead of the curve at every step, which of course would transition into what I think this next hire will be. But at the same time, it's like holding Joe C., holding his feet to the fire, or thinking that you need to fire him because Brent Venables and crew took an injury-laden team to 6-7 last year in the SEC. It's just extremely short-sighted, and it shows just a complete lack of understanding of what an athletic director actually does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, and you brought something up. You posted something. It might have been today or yesterday, kind of going with an outside hire of somebody in the private sector. I believe that was you that posted that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting thought too, just because you think of what Oklahoma has done recently, and I'm talking in the last year. I'm talking the last 365 days. It's really kind of gone, kind of off the deep end in a lot of ways, and that being one of them. George Stoya actually. I have to give him a shout out because he actually put this list together, because I was thinking about this and then I saw his post and I was like, he listed even more than what I could think of. But you think of the last year, Oklahoma, George Stoya, and I should have had this ready to put up on the screen so everybody could see it. But they've hired 2 GMs at the school. They hired an AT&T chairman. They've fired their offensive coordinator, hired a new one, landed the top portal QB. And to add to that, added the top portal running back as well. The head coach became the defensive coordinator because the defensive coordinator left. Now the athletic director announces their retirement, and he also threw in there that Oklahoma has lost the Navy, which I don't know why he had to put that little dig in there from an Oklahoma reporter. But
right.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, just looking at all that has happened, there was a few other things that I was thinking of that I just didn't write down, but there's been so much that Oklahoma has gone through, and specifically I'm thinking of Jim Nagy and Trey Young. With those two hires, specifically, those are the two that, man, this is just so unordinary to college sports, but it's necessary going that direction. And I think you brought up a good point with that. I think Oklahoma does need to look towards the future. What is going to be needed, not next season, but what's going to be needed in 5 years? What's going to be needed in 10 years to keep this tradition of winning around Oklahoma? And I think that was a pretty good point that you brought up.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of high school athletic directors in my day gig, and there seems to be a theme that many of them, God love them for sure, there are a lot of very good ones out there, but it seems like once you've coached the football team long enough at the high school that you just get the AD job after that, or something like it's just okay. You're the AD, manage the coaches, but go to the conferences. I've got another conference coming up this weekend with the Border State Summit. It's all ADs from 4 different states, and it's it's just such a dramatic difference because I think that shapes a lot of people's minds into what an athletic director does. It's like, oh, that's why so many people were like, oh, Bob Stoops needed to be AD. Like I wanted to reach through Twitter and smack some people. Like, what do you get? Like, you're just showing how out of touch with reality you are. And like with this, of course, you've got your traditional candidates that all would love to work at Oklahoma. I think you could hire 100 different current ADs to come work at Oklahoma. But man, everything's changing. As you said, the Trae Young hire, I hadn't even brought that up, but the Trae Young hire, right? You bring in Taylor Redd from the New England Patriots, right, to be assistant GM under Nagy, who nobody knew was even available, right? You're doing things. Randall Stevenson's had a huge hand in shaping things because this is a guy. Look, college football right now can be described as disruptive. College athletics, it's disruptive right now. There are things going on with the portal, with the House settlement, with NIL, with conference realignment, with new TV deals, with streaming deals being now new. Like, it's all extremely disruptive, and you have to forecast. You have to think about way down the line, right? Like, that's not something that many athletic directors, if any athletic directors, are used to dealing with. But a guy like Randall Stevenson, in dealing in the, CEO for AT&T for, 15, 17 years, something like that. Like, that's a guy that's dealt with some disruptive type of industries, right? You talk about how much AT&T has been in an industry that's been disruptive with the technological advancements in that sense. Like, you need people that are willing to make big boy decisions, swing for the fences at times, calculated risks though, and understand the forecasting of these things. You need people that are used to dealing with probably some venture capital, some private equity type people, creative corporate sponsorships, whether it's selling a patch on the jersey or selling naming rights to a stadium or getting a financial partner that handles all NIL deals or something like that. And honestly, I know we don't like him, but kind of like what Brett Yormark has done with the Big 12. That was not a normal hire for the Big 12, but they did what they thought they needed to do. And this guy, all of a sudden, he wants to put out all this new stuff, right? He's trying with a conference that really is no threat anymore. Like, Arizona State was a great story last year. But the Big 12, he's trying to, today's the deepest conference in America. That's another way of saying there's probably not anybody that's really great, and you guys are just going to cannibalize.
Yeah, we're all top to bottom the same, and that's really how I look at the Big 12 right now.
And when you look at the sorry to interrupt, but when you look at the FanDuel odds, like, it's crazy to me. Like, there are 3 or 4 schools that are all tied with pretty bad odds to win the Big 12. And it's because nobody knows who's going to be good, right? Whereas you look at the SEC and it's like, okay, Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, kind of separate themselves, especially Georgia and Texas. The Big Ten's got it separate. The ACC got it separate. The Big 12, the odds makers are like, no idea. No idea if anybody's going to be any good whatsoever because none of them recruit well, except Texas Tech now, apparently. But none of them recruit well. None of them have, elite coaching that you would argue for. Gundy's probably the surest fire Hall of Famer in the entire, Big 12, and he didn't win a single conference game last year.
Yeah, well, so, I just pulled up the odds too. And I feel like the top 10 are pretty neck and neck. You go from you've got the top 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got the top 5 are all tied at plus 600 to win the Big 12.
That's insane.
What other conference is that deep? If you want to say that, if you want to put it in the words of Brett Yormark.
Deep is where. But again, Brett Yormark is perfect for that conference. Yeah. Trying to prop it up, trying to sell it,
I do have to give.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I do have to give the Big 12 props. I have to give them credit where it's due. They're in a much better situation than they were when Oklahoma and Texas a mention that they were leaving. And if you look at them compared to, I think even the ACC long term, I'm talking longevity. You talk about them compared to the ACC, or them obviously against the Pac-12. They have done a phenomenal job of piecing together the right programs to at least maintain some sort of longevity for the future. Because outside of football, the Big 12 is a pretty good conference. You talk about baseball, basketball, and I think even women's basketball as well, kind of being grouped in that. They do have some good teams there. So I will give the Big 12 credit where credit's due there. It's just in terms of football, which is what Brett Yormark was talking about. It's not there.
Yeah, it's really not. So yeah, but to say that, it's Yormark's the guy for the job. Like,
Yeah.
They didn't need to hire some other former AD to come in and be the conference commissioner and do this, that, and the other and act like an AD. You needed somebody to come in and act like a WWE exec, if you will, right? So, in that role, that's good. The new AD role for Oklahoma, I'm looking for like a young, hungry CEO type that understands, or somebody that's in professional sports. Somebody brought up a great name to me the other day, Sam Hinkie. He's an Oklahoma graduate and Stanford graduate. And obviously he's a genius, but, it didn't work out in Philly, doing the process and this, that, and the other. But like a guy like that's like, just go get somebody that's incredibly smart and then give them the tools to succeed. And I think that somebody that speaks the CEO language will be able to speak, effectively to the donor base. I think Randall Stevenson is the right guy to pick that guy. At this point, I would be a bit surprised if Oklahoma hired somebody that is a traditional hire.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked myself out of the traditional hire at this point, and I've talked myself almost all the way into it's coming from the private sector. It's going to shock a lot of people. It's going to be outside the box, and could be a professional sports tie, could be just a corporate tie. And people say, well, they've got to know college sports. Okay, well, what is knowing college sports from an athletic director's perspective?
Well, especially today's college sports as well. I think it's totally different than what it was even 5 years ago.
Right, and knowing college sports, is that he's a fan of college sports or she's a fan of college sports? Is it he or she is a season ticket holder to their alma mater? Is it that they're invested in the NIL program at their alma mater? Is it that they, subscribe to the Voice of College Football? What is it? What is it, right? Like the people that say, well, they've got to know college. Okay, well, we'll qualify that. Like define this person knows college football. Because what I want is somebody that knows how to run a business. Because back in the day, you had free labor. Let's call it what it is. You had free labor, and it produced a lot of money. Well, now you've got $20.5 million annually that you have a new payroll line on. What does that mean? What does that mean for people that are in the athletic department right now that may be seen as not as essential as some other positions? Those exist. They exist in every company. I mean, what happens to that? What happens to other brand deals? How do they look? You've got to be creative, and you have to have somebody that's willing to take the big swings. And that's I couldn't be more excited. And I think that's part of why. I think there's two reasons why Joe's staying on. One, it's because he's got a lot of projects he's got to finish. He's got to finish. He's got to at least break ground on basketball. He's got to finish baseball. He's got to finish the West Side renovation. And then there was one other. I forget. But he started a lot of projects. So he needs to finish those. He needs to get going on them. And he wants that to be, part of his legacy. I know for a fact that he is listed as the Sooner Club, like the donor arm, the Sooner Club contact for a lot of donors. Not like just a random salesperson. Joe Castiglione is their contact. And I know he's already been reaching out today because he reaches out every day of his life saying, hey, look, I got to get this done. This is my legacy. You've been a great partner to me for a long time. Let's go ahead and let's finish this thing off together. What can I put you down for? Type vibes, right? Because when we had him at our event at the OU Club of Tulsa, Josie sat in the parking lot and was on the phone trying to raise money for the athletic department. This is a guy at every moment is trying to raise money to pay for things. So anybody who thinks Josie is just sitting back and ashing his cigars into his fedoras, you are sadly mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, and it really does go unnoticed. And you've already brought up all three. I think both of us have mentioned the three really obvious ones. So I know you made it again. I saw your list that you put out right away, and I was like, hey, two of those guys were guys that I was thinking of too, and that being Zach Selman and Kirby Holcutt. I think those are like, I think those are like the two most obvious hires, and then I know you mentioned Michael Alford as well, which would be another one too. Whenever I looked into him, I was like, "Hey, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. A lot of ties back to Oklahoma. A lot of ties into the program and to Joe C." So I think those would be the. I don't know if you call them safe hires, but I think like the obvious ones. But I feel like it's going to be a lot like I don't know how many Oklahoma fans will remember this, but back whenever Bo Pelini got fired from Nebraska, and the search was on, and they were going after these big hires. All the articles were throwing out these big names, and I can't remember all of the names that were being thrown out there, but it was big time guys that were tied to the program, other guys that weren't even tied to the program, and it was just going after a list of big names that it was obvious these are the obvious guys that Nebraska has to look for, and they ended up going with Mike Riley, a guy that had one winning season in his entire career out at Oregon State, and they went with him, and everyone was like, "Wait, what? Who is this?" And I feel like not comparing the resume that Oklahoma would be searching for, but I do feel like it would be that kind of a surprise that all of a sudden a name gets dropped in there, and you're like, "Wait, what? Who is this guy?" And you have to look into him. I think Oklahoma is going to go for an absolute home run hire, a grand slam hire, the way that they did with Jim Nagy, trying to go after him. I think Jim Nagy or even what Trae Young. I'm not sure how much Trae Young can do in terms of day-to-day process the way that Jim Nagy does, just because he's also a busy man trying to do something in the league, right? But he is drawing an impact to the sport and impacting recruits big time. So I think with those kinds of hires in recent years, or in recent days, I should say, recent months, I think it's definitely going to be kind of that outside, crazy, off-the-wall hire that you get really excited about. And I think that's what Oklahoma fans can be excited about, is knowing that not excited that Josie is leaving, although I'm sure some will, but just the fact that, hey, we're about to turn the page into a new chapter, and I think Josie is the guy that's going to help transition that in, and that's what I love to see from him.
Yeah, another name, you bring up Alford and Zach. A name to look for as well, who probably would want the job more than anybody, would be Ren Baker. Ren Baker, West Virginia athletic director, well respected, born in Valiant, Oklahoma. That's a guy that would, I think, like you could put broken glass from Morgantown all the way to Norman. He'd probably crawl to it to get to Oklahoma.
And it's one of those programs too that, like I mentioned earlier, the 26 national championships as an entire athletic department, 117 conference championships. How many Heisman winners since 2000? So you had Sam, Jason White, and then Baker and Kyler, right?
Yeah.
So 4 since 2000. And then, of course, you had Josh Heupel on your roster. You had guys like DeMarco Murray and Adrian Peterson going over to basketball with guys like Blake Griffin and Buddy Hield. I mean, the list can go on with all of the great success, the championship mindset, the winning mindset that Oklahoma has. It's going to be a job opening that people are going to be calling and trying to inquire about. It's not going to be one that they're going to have to make a whole lot of calls. They're going to have people coming for it. So, I think that's one thing. You're going to hear a lot of names being thrown in there because a lot of people are going to want it. And a lot of people are going to try to get their hands on it, throw their resumes in there. I know I've already sent mine down to Norman just to see if, what if I get my hands on that job. But
good. Hopefully they're not watching. They'll grill you for those technological issues earlier.
Yeah, I know, right?
Might have cost you. Might have cost you. But yeah,
that might have been it.
Might have been the nail in the coffin. But yeah, again, I think the biggest I think the biggest question of this hiring process is, are they going with a traditional AD approach or are they going with a private sector approach? After that, I think that tells you way more than anything else. If they go with a traditional approach, then they're trusting the Jim Nagy's of the world to run a department almost separate from the AD, right? We've got our own football program here that runs almost independent of the athletic department to a degree, or at least independent from the athletic director's direct input, right? Like if it comes to a coaching hire, I'd imagine Jim Nagy would have, say in that coaching hire, in Randall Stevenson maybe, but probably Jim Nagy would have say in that hire, and Jake Rosenberg more so than whoever the next AD will even be. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe if you go a traditional route, you insulate the football program from it and kind of stay trying to push ahead in the new era with your GM, yet leave the athletic department still a bit more traditional.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right too. I like that you put it that way, that once you know the direction of where they're thinking, it starts to open up a lot more possibilities. You're going to start to feel like the names are narrowing down too, if you know which direction. Because I think if they go the GM direction, the traditional direction, then you're going to know kind of your top five at least is what you're going to start to narrow it down to pretty quickly. But Travis, I'm going to let you hop out of here, man. I appreciate you so much for jumping on. Before you go,
Absolutely.
let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Oh boy, yeah. So I am Travis Skoll, TravissSkol, on both Twitter and Instagram. I am on now Fridays during the summer from 3 to 6 on KREF, the home of Sooner fans. And then I'm also on the JP and Trav show, typically every Wednesday or Thursday night. Been doing that show for about 3 or 4 years now. So that, and then if you're an athletic director or a coach watching, get in touch with me. Team Sports Consulting Group is actually my day job. We do relational science consulting for Oklahoma State baseball, 7 sports at ORU, a ton of high schools. We're across 5 states in the high school ranks. So get at me, and I appreciate you having me on, man. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to catch up with you. You have a good rest of your night, man.
Hey, you too, man. Be good.
Yep. All right. And we're going to jump over to the chat here in just a little bit. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, it looks like the internet issues have kind of gone away. I was playing with some stuff while Travis was talking, so that helped out having him on, at least for that much. But jump in the chat real quick. Give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Make sure you're subscribed over to the channel and follow on social media as well. Down in the description, there's even social media links for X, Instagram, all that fun stuff for this show. So if you're a fan of the show, if you are a fan of Oklahoma football, that's what you need to do. Go jump over there. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. But I'm going to get into a little bit of recruiting updates. I don't have a whole lot on the recruiting end. I'm just mainly going to talk about what happened. Let's see, this would have been yesterday, if memory serves me correctly, that Oklahoma had a big-time commit in a tight end, a position group that Oklahoma had to fix. It was a position group that Oklahoma has struggled with for the last 2 or 3 seasons, at least 2 or 3 years, specifically in recruiting guys in, and then also being able to develop them. And a lot of hate thrown towards Joe John Finley, and maybe it's his fault. Maybe if you want to direct the blame, you can blame it whoever you want to blame it on. One thing that you won't catch me doing on this show is I don't really like to blame specific people or throw people under the bus. I don't like to badmouth. I'll be critical where it's due. I think that's necessary. But in my line of work, it's just not. It's not worth it to be throwing guys under the bus, to be criticizing them. But rather, maybe constructive criticism. I will absolutely do that. It's just I don't think it's worth it to bash people. As a fan, I speak out against it. But of course, fans are allowed to do what they want. I'm never holding anybody back or trying to shut them up. I've been accused of that in the past. That's not what I'm trying to do. Anyways, 6'4", 220-pound tight end Tyler Ruxer committed to OU yesterday. Big time commit, number 1 tight end, really the number 1 prospect in all of Indiana. and the number 9 tight end in the country. Huge. I mean, again, this is one of those things that it's a 4-star commit that might as well, it feels more like a 5-star. Again, going back to what Jim Nagy was talking about with the star system. This is a guy that he has 4 stars on his name, but Oklahoma's treating him like we just got a 5-star for a good reason, because it's a position that you need. It's a guy that has shown a lot of really good improvement in his junior year. He won a state championship, had 43 receptions for 893 yards, 12 touchdowns, averaging 20 yards per catch. Just a huge year for him. And his sophomore year was another really big year that kind of got him on the map, and he really built off of that. And his junior year was what went completely bonkers. And so this was a big-time get for Oklahoma, and it's very obvious that this is the type of tight end that they want. Again, 6'4", 220, that's the type of stature you're looking for, and especially when they're able to be athletic. I know that Oklahoma was going after Josiah Jefferson, a JUCO, Tony Jefferson's younger brother. They were going after him and hoping to be able to secure his commitment, but it didn't go their way, and it was a big letdown for Oklahoma. It really did feel like, it felt like watching Angel Reese go down for a layup and just completely miss. This was the rebound. So if you understand that analogy, but it really did feel like one of those that just felt like there's no way you can mess this one up. Josiah Jefferson is in Oklahoma's pocket and builds them up for the next 2 seasons, maybe. And this is a guy, again, that is that stature and athleticism that you need at the tight end position. And Oklahoma really needs to build on that, especially this upcoming season. What do they have? They have Carson Kent. Outside of that, they don't feel very confident in that room. They feel so unconfident in the tight end room that they had a linebacker transition over this past season, this past off season, I should say. So it's a tight end group that Oklahoma needs to build up, and Joe John Finley finally got one. And I know I was reading what Parker Thune put on OU Insider, and seeing what he had a discussion with Tyler and talked to him, and he was asking him why he chose Oklahoma, and a big part of why he chose Oklahoma was Joe John Finley. And what fans don't recognize, you can call this soft, you can call it whatever you want to call it. I call it a smart move. Joe John Finley had to delete his Twitter account completely, his X account. He had to go to extremes in that regard to completely shut out all of the outside noise, because it was just getting so toxic. People calling for his job when he had to take over for an offensive coordinator who really drove this offense into the ground, and he was supposed to revive it, and people blamed him for not being able to revive it. And then, of course, I think there was a lot that played into these past few seasons, these past few recruiting cycles where Oklahoma hasn't been able to get into that tight end room. Again, I'm not here to criticize and to cut down Joe John Finley. That's not at all what I would do. I think I've seen how hard he has tried. I have seen him not give up. I have seen him stick around when it became completely toxic to be around, and keeps on fighting hard. And it finally paid off with getting a 4-star prospect that feels like a 5-star. He finally went out there and got a top guy, not just a big tight end in the class, not just, oh man, hey, we got a top 50. This is a top 10 tight end in the entire country in this 2026 class. So it was huge. It was huge for Oklahoma. It was huge for Joe John Finley to get on track and get himself a guy. And again, going back to what Parker Thune was talking to Tyler Rexer about, was he believed in Joe John Finley. He believed that he had something to offer when it came to development. And Joe John even talked to him about, hey, I'm going to tell you the same thing I had to tell myself. Just get off of Twitter, get off of social media, because Oklahoma fans were being so destructive to the program and to, and so I don't know what you want to call it other than toxic towards a guy like Joe John Finley, that, he couldn't bear it anymore. And now you have recruits that look into that and see how the program is feeding into that and causing so much chaos there. where Joe John Finley just had to get off of it. He had to leave social media. Just it's not worth being around it anymore. And he talked to Tyler Ruxer about it, and Tyler Ruxer said, I just recognized that people are going to hate on whatever they can get their hands on. There's always going to be something that people hate on, and ultimately, that's what it comes down to, and that's the tough personality that he's got. He knows that Joe John Finley, not only did he make it as a tight end, he made it to the NFL, but then now the development that he can put into guys, he believes in that. And so whether you believe it or not, you can take that upon your own judgment. But the number 9 tight end in his respective class believes that in Joe John Finley and believes that he can get him to the next level. So big time get for Oklahoma, getting Tyler Ruxer. And hopefully I know that there's a lot of these guys that I'm probably saying their last name right. I'm not sure if it's Ruxer or Ruxer. Anyways, I am not Parker Thune. He is the man who knows all the pronunciations. But going on to recruiting, I know that this has been one that Oklahoma fans have been very frustrated with, and I can understand why. You recently lost Braxton Lindsey. There's several others that I feel like have kind of been in the grasp, it been right there for Oklahoma to get and just haven't been able to close in on them. There's been wide receivers, and names are slipping me right now, but there has been a lot of frustration recently, and maybe Jim Nagy's way isn't going to work. We talked about this already. I'm not going to go back into it, but there are there's a few Oklahoma fans already that absolutely hate Jim Nagy's way of recruiting and way of judging players and way of rating players himself, whether they want to really make an aggressive push for them or not. And that's up to fans to decide whether they like it or not, but it's not really something that you can look at and just hate right. I mean, I don't understand the hate right off the bat without giving it a chance. It doesn't sound good. I understand why people are leery about it, but even at that, Oklahoma fans are acting as if Oklahoma is just struggling in the recruiting right now, just because they've lost a few bigger recruits or just because they see a higher number of 3 stars coming in. If you take, so right now, Oklahoma is currently in the top 20 recruiting class for the 2026 class. They have 15 commits so far, and there's a few bigger ones coming soon. Oklahoma just made the top 3 for Jake Kruel. So that's a big time, D lineman that they are hoping to get. That's a man that, if you've seen any kind of clips from him and his athleticism, his speed, his aggression that he plays with, that's definitely a guy that Oklahoma wants very badly, and they're hoping to get him. But he just closed in on his top 3, and let's see, it was Ole Miss, Texas, and Oklahoma. That was his top 3. So they're hoping for a big one there. There's a few others that they're going after and that they hope to get some of these bigger 4-star players. And who knows, maybe there's a 5-star in there that they end up getting their hands on. I don't think it's going to happen this cycle. I think the 5 stars are pretty much out the window for Oklahoma, but that's okay. 5 stars don't seem to really work at Oklahoma in the long run. But right now, if you take an average rating across On3 Rivals, which is now all one now, sort of, and then you've also got ESPN 247, and just kind of take a complete ratings, mashup and mash all of them up together. Kind of take the average rating for each of these players. If you were to do it that way, then Oklahoma has 7 4-stars and 8 3-stars right now on their 2026 cycle. And of those 3 stars, the kicker is one of them, which, from what I understand, is pretty incredible to be rated that high as a kicker, and having a team go after you as hard as they went after him. So you think of what Oklahoma has put together in this cycle. Oklahoma fans are worried. They're worried about recruiting, but it's early in the cycle for one. You still have this whole season, and towards the end of the season is when you're going to get those late commits. Think of how late it took for Michael Fasusi to throw in his commitment to Oklahoma. And there's plenty of others in the past that have gone that route. And so this is still early in the cycle. I'm actually surprised to see as many big-time players come off the board already and make their commitments. Of course, they're all verbal commits, so it's really going to come down to signing day. Who are they going to sign with? And that's really where the push comes. And so right now, there's a lot of guys that Oklahoma might have lost in the verbal commitment, but they're still going to make their push. They're still going to leave that door open for that player, for that prospect to make their return if that's a guy that they really felt good about, a guy that they really hate to lose. That's what they're going to do. It's early in the cycle, so that's one thing. And again, some of the biggest players are still yet to come. Some of the biggest players are still yet to come. So that's something that Oklahoma fans, hopefully we can take a little bit of solace in that, and understanding that this recruiting class is not as bad as it seems when you just take it day by day. Now, I did want to get to some questions that I know were popping up here recently. A lot of people were asking some questions about summer workouts and some of the summer practices and all of that, the training. And I will tell you, there's not a whole lot of intel out on it. They currently, I believe still, are all the coaching staff, most of the players, they're not even really on campus. A lot of them are kind of taking their break. And for some coaches, many of the coaches are maybe going out there and recruiting. They're hitting the recruiting trails. They take this time where it's more of a rest period, and so there's not a whole lot to get from that. But from what I have heard and what I do know, not from me hearing personally, but again, I'm not an insider. I know the insiders, so I'm not the source. I'm not the one going to the source. So I'm just telling you what I do know. So as far as what we do know with the wide receiver room, the wide receiver health, it seems like things are looking upward. That's all that I know right now. We don't really know a whole lot until it gets closer to fall camp. Once it gets closer to fall time, then you know exactly which direction they're going. And that's when they're going to be really careful right now. Once they get closer to fall, that's where they look a little deeper into things like rehab and really hit that hard. And especially for guys that need it the most. You think of guys like Jaden Gibson. They're going to make sure that he's in bubble wrap right now. He's not doing anything that he's not supposed to be doing, and they're being extremely cautious. They're being actively being careful right now this time of season because of what happened this time last year. And so that's one thing that, with specifically in the wide receiver group, and that entire room is completely just under. Everybody be careful. Everybody wrap yourself up in bubble wrap. We'll do. You're allowed to do certain exercises. You're not allowed to do this. There will be repercussions if we see you doing anything. Like I said, Jaden Gibson, that's one that I know a lot of people are mentioning. How is he looking? When is he going to be back? Is he going to be back? They're hoping that by fall practices, he's good enough to go through an intense rehab, get back, and have him ready by week 1. The plan wouldn't be to have him playing in game 1. But, him or even a few others that are kind of a little bit of an injury concern around them, they're not going to have them play too much in week 1 it's Illinois State. You really don't want to put those guys out on the field at all and until you have to. And, of course, week 2 is the time that you'd probably want to put them out there. That's they're hopeful to have these guys ready by week 1, specifically Jaden Gibson. They're hopeful that by the time fall comes around, we'll kind of start to hear more news will start to roll out, and so we can kind of get a little bit more on that front, specifically with him and other wide receivers. So hopefully everything's looking good right now. Hopefully everything kind of stays that way. No news right now is good news, because if you're getting news, it's usually big-time news. It's sometimes not good news. For example, Joe C. retiring. It's not the end of the world news, but it's big news. It's not great news. So it's exciting news for many reasons. You're going in a new direction, and that's really what Oklahoma needs at this point. They do need to go in a different direction. I'm not saying anything bad about Joe C. I love Joe C. I will always be thankful for what he did for Oklahoma, bringing them out of what many Oklahoma fans call the dark ages. So, but right now, as far as players go, though, no news is good news, because once you start to hear news about the players, it means either they're getting into trouble or they're getting hurt. So no news right now, really, in terms of new news. We will have more once they get back into their fall practices. As far as the summer workouts go, again, that was a big question. How are these summer workouts going? I know that Brandon Drum mentioned, he said that one name that he heard mentioned a lot when he was asking about how the summer workouts were going was Cortland Guillory. Cortland Guillory, a freshman, he's going to be wearing number 4 on the defensive side. He's a DB. They talked about him as a guy that really could see the field and see significant playing time as a freshman, much like what we saw with Eli Bowen. And they're looking at him. Apparently, that's a guy that they've been talking a lot about, and so I would take that as a very good thing, especially in that DB room where you need that to be as deep as you can, because I think that's the one room. Again, it's not that I don't have faith in the guys that are there with Eli and Peyton and RSJ, and then of course with Gentry Williams. So you've got guys that are in that DB room that you feel comfortable with. Specifically at corner, though, I don't know how you feel about the depth. It's just an uncertainty out there, and I've mentioned that before here on this show. And so hearing about freshmen like Cortland Guillory, that is a really good thing to hear. And specifically in the summer workouts, his work ethic is one thing that was brought up a lot, and how much growth that they've seen from him. And so, they have kind of compared him to the type of growth that they saw this time of year from Eli last season. So that's really good stuff to hear. So hopefully that keeps on going on and we hear a little bit more. One thing that they're doing differently right now that I've heard is that they are changing up the method and how they're going through their hard conditioning, making sure that they allow a few meals in the morning and stuff, and trying to allow them to get a few meals into their system before they go into the intense conditioning. They've done studies on stuff that they did in the past compared to how they could do it differently, trying to break down whatever it was that caused that freak of nature, with all the injuries that happened last season. And so they've done things differently. They've ran their camp a little bit differently this time around this season. So hopefully that changes a lot. We definitely can look back at last season and see what happened from summer to fall, and then from fall through the rest of the season, and just recognize it seemed like once the injuries seemed like, hey, we're looking good, all of a sudden they just went right back down. And you can blame that on other things. I know Oklahoma fans have their conspiracies. You can blame that on whatever you want to blame it on. But it really was just a mix of bad luck and maybe just bad preparation. And I think they're doing that right this time around. They're trying to, at least. And so, this is they're all focusing on things that will be better for their health. So that's pretty much all I've got on the summer workouts, recruiting, all that. Like I said, too, Jake Cruel narrowing it down to Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Texas, the 3 schools that he's feeling most confident about. So really good news for Oklahoma that they make it into the top 3. Absolutely good news there. I'm going to jump over to the chat. Make sure to jump in the chat if you haven't already. I'll see if you got any questions, anything big that I can go through, then I absolutely will. I do see corrections in the chat. He's a big fan of the show. Boomer, Sooner, right back at you, man. Let's see. Was interesting to hear Gabe on his podcast say OU had Deacon Schmidt graded higher than Felix Ojo. Oho. I'm not really sure how to say his last name. I haven't heard it. Matches what Nagy was saying on that podcast about who they go after. Yeah, and that's a really good point to bring up, Jonathan, because that's really what Nagy is talking about. I mean, if you really break it down to what Nagy was explaining, in the day of the transfer portal and NIL, you have to recognize this as one thing, okay? So, not as one thing. You have to recognize this as a whole new thing, where now in the recruiting process, these kids that are coming out of high school are going to be recruited and pulled in different directions because of money. Money is going to be an aspect. And so you do have to take that into consideration. How much are we willing to pay these 4 and 5 stars? Like before we were able to just bring them in and say, we've got tradition, we win, and we build you up to send you to the pros. But now there's a lot more than just that. That still plays into it, and that does bring in certain recruits. But if that 18-year-old kid, 17, 18-year-old kid is being enticed with a large amount of money somewhere else, he's most likely going to jump ship, and you can't really blame him for that. Because if he can get something very similar to what he's getting at Oklahoma, but get more money, that's what they're battling now. So yes, they do have to kind of look into this recruiting and at a different light. We have to try to be careful about how we're going about things and making sure that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where we can't afford to pay the top players because we just spent money on a player that didn't end up producing anything for us. And so it's a big high risk out of recruiting out of high school. It's a higher risk. Whereas if you try to split that up and spend the bigger money on the transfer portal, and I don't think that was necessarily what Jim Nagy was saying, but I do believe that that's the path that they're going. Let's spend more in the transfer portal and get the certain players, the guys that we know have shown production, guys like John Mateer that we see something special with at the collegiate level, guys like Jaden Ott that we see something special with at the collegiate level. Let's go after those guys and pay them the bigger sums of money and try to maybe save some of that. I do think that that's part of what they're talking about. What I don't think that was what Jim Nagy was talking about directly, but I do think that's what direction they're trying to go through. And so that's definitely something that you have to take into consideration nowadays. And like you brought up there, Jonathan, too, is that that they're getting these guys in and evaluating them after they get them on the roster and recognizing, hey, we had this guy who was rated higher, but we really feel better about where he stands going into the season. And that's going to happen. Good point to bring up there. Brandon says, I hope they're smart enough to make an outside hire for AD. I agree with you. The safe in-house pick is never the right decision. Joe C. single-handedly destroyed the baseball program 10 years ago. I really didn't follow the baseball program close enough 10 years ago. I really have only followed close enough about the last 5 years or so. So I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to. I would have to look that up. In terms of making it an outside hire, I agree with that. The safe in-house pick is never the right decision. I wouldn't say it's never the right decision. I think there's a time and place to make an in-house hire. It's happened in the past. I think when they made an in-house hire, it was kind of groomed to be that way for Bob Stoops handing it over to Lincoln Riley. And I know Oklahoma fans don't want to admit that now after everything that's happened there, but that was a good in-house pick in terms of look at how the program did not take a decline at all. They were right back into it, and they went to the national championship contention. They went to the playoffs that very same season. So I don't know that it's never the right decision, but I do agree with you. I think looking for that outside hire, kind of like what Travis and I were talking about, I think they need to look for that outside hire and that outside kind of unusual hire. I don't want to say, I'll just say unusual hire. The one that would kind of strike people and say, wow, what were they doing here? And then after you look into it, kind of like the Jim Nagy hire, what are you going with here? Oh, actually, I kind of like this. I like where you're going. And I think Ben Arbuckle was he wasn't untraditional. He wasn't an untraditional hire by any means, but that was one that he wasn't at the top of the boards when people were first talking about who could come in as offensive coordinator. And then they hired him, and I think fans overall like him quite a bit. They like what they see from him. They like what they have heard from him. They like what he has on his resume. And they like that this is, honestly, I think a lot of Oklahoma fans like that this is his first big shot. Because, hey, this is make it or break it. I mean, it really is. Show us what you're made of. If you feel like you deserve this big stage, prove it. And, there's certain guys that really excel, and he seems like that guy that's going to excel in that situation. Jen Kane says, you have no idea who is going to rise to the top of the SEC because of the portal. Yeah, you're totally correct. It's the day of the transfer portal has changed things in college football so drastically, where one transfer portal season, one transfer portal window can totally change a roster. You can go after some of the top performing guys. Nico Iamaleava, he was drawn out of Tennessee to go to UCLA. Look up what UCLA did last season compared to what Tennessee has done the last 2 or 3, 4 seasons. And he left to go there. That's how crazy the transfer portal is. Or you have guys, and I'm not trying to criticize. There's different reasons for it. I think Zach Calzada is one example. Casey Thompson's an example, one that Oklahoma fans probably remember, because he started. Casey Thompson was at Texas, went to Nebraska, went to FAU, went to Oklahoma. I mean, 4 stops in your collegiate career. There's guys with 5 or 6 stops in their collegiate career, and that's becoming more and more normal. And so, yeah, the transfer portal is a crazy thing, and it's not just the SEC either. Really, you don't know who's going to rise to the top in any conference because of the transfer portal. There's some teams like Curt Cignetti who have to really rely on that transfer portal, and he really has, and it's done a lot of good, at least for last year in his first season with IU. We'll see what he's able to do. I'm really interested. I like him. I hope that he kind of keeps that up. Gash Blitz says the new AD is going to be a left field hire. Won't come from a traditional college athletic background. I'm willing to bet, and I think I would agree with you. Like I said to Travis, I really do think that this is going to be a hire that you're going to scratch your head and you're going to wonder, like, why were you going this route? And you're going to start to read some articles on who they hired and why they hired them, and here's the press conferences about why they hired this new athletic director, and you're going to say, okay, I'm about it. Of course, there's going to be some Oklahoma fans out there that this was stupid. This is the worst decision ever. Why would you make this decision? Why would you pick him? I'm interested to see where they go. I really am. I think this is an exciting time. It's an exciting time because, like I mentioned earlier, it's not like you just lost. It's not like you lost Joe C overnight. He said, "Hey, I've decided that this is when I'm going to retire, and I want to give you a heads up. Let's get some things wrapped up, and let's work on transitioning from what I've done. Let's work on that together." So I think that's a really important time, a really exciting time for Oklahoma because of how it's going down. Going back to Jen, says they have to like and enjoy college sports and be well experienced in marketing and business. I think that's still kind of a vague. I don't think you really can define what makes a good athletic director. I think all of that fits into an athletic director and what they should look for. I don't think they necessarily have to have a sports background. Obviously, that's what Travis and I were talking about. I don't think they really have to have a sports background. As long as they understand, if someone understands business, guess what? They're going to probably understand the trajectory of where everything is going. If they have a really good understanding. Now, do I want them to have a sports background? Yes, I want you to have some sort of sports background. I want you to understand what makes up good chemistry on sports programs, and what makes up a good hire in college football and college basketball and college softball, baseball, whatever comes from being an athletic director. I want you to have that background. But yeah, I really don't know how you would define what makes a good athletic director. Social media has a lot of terrible, toxic, broken people on it. You just have to look at those celebrating the deaths of. You're. I haven't seen anybody celebrating that. That's one thing I haven't mentioned on the show. Usually, I try to keep it lighthearted, but yeah, prayers out to those who were. Okay, you're talking about the Texas. Yeah, there's all kinds of terrible things going on down in Texas. But yeah, I know there's been a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There are people that take tragedies and try to make jokes out of them. I saw. I don't know, man. I try to be lighthearted in my humor. And lighthearted, and I try to be I try to be pretty. I don't know. I guess unapologetic. It's probably not the right term. I'm pretty open with comedy, and making jokes, teasing, making fun. But yeah, there's certain things I think just go too far, and I think you do that with people, like we were talking about with the athletic program. You take it too far with your own recruits. I think the people that were cutting down David Stone and his decisions and didn't know the entire background. None of us know what he was going through. None of us truly know what he was going through, him personally. We get an idea. We've heard the stories, but people were bashing him. People bash on Bauer Sharp, Spencer Rattler while they're still in the program. People are calling for Joe John Finley and Seth Luttrell's job while they're still leading your team. It doesn't make sense to me. And so, but yeah, you're right. It is a toxic place, and so There are definitely times when I wish that this profession didn't force me to have to be on social media so much to see some of the stupidity that goes on and really terrible and destructive things that are on social media. But anyways, thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We will be back on Thursday for a live call-in show. Hopefully no internet interruptions and things like that on Thursday, but we will be back here live on this channel. So make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. It'll notify you every time that we go live, because we go live on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Mondays is the Sooner Smiths at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time with Chad and Tierney Smith. Tuesdays here live with me and possibly even a guest, maybe two. And then also on Thursdays live at 7 p.m. as well. We keep it 7 p.m., keep it simple. And again, follow us on social media. We've got our own Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football media pages. We've been very active on X, Twitter. So if you're over there, go follow us over there. You can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Real Josh Mahler, to catch up with everything else that I do in terms of covering the sports and all that kind of stuff. So again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.